Mic is on now. Great. Well, I'm very excited to be able to be here and talk for the first time, not just about a great story with Convio and Apirio's professional services product, but actually also be able to talk about some of the stuff we just showed in the keynote about how we're going to make that social. So we're going to go through a couple of slides on taking a step back, pre-keynote today, about us products, what we see in professional services as a business. And then I really want to turn it over to these guys, to Ken and Bern from Convio, who have lived this. And they can tell you their story about how they have looked at things, what they did, the journey they went through, the lessons they learned in using Force.com and Salesforce as a platform for their professional services organization. So this is their safe harbor statement, I think, so we're good. Couple things. We're going to talk about the need for services resource planning, which is what we talk about the professional services organization. We're going to talk about how the professional services cloud, since everything is a cloud, enables this vision. And then we're going to hear these guys' story about what Convio does as a company, how it transitioned its professional services to the cloud, and some of the key lessons that they learned, and some of the Q&A around that. So I'm Narinder Singh. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and actually the head of R&D at Aperio. I've had the opportunity to work with Force.com and Salesforce for the last 3 years now. Before that, I came from SAP in corporate strategy, and before that, I had the opportunity to run R&D at webMethods. So I've seen what on-premise software is to integrate with and how it is to upgrade and be able to go through there. And that's why I'm so excited about what Force.com as a platform is able to provide. How many folks in the room are actually somehow affiliated with professional services? That's awesome. That's great. Sometimes one of the hardest things about Dreamforce is there's so much different content. I believe this is the first year ever there's been tracks for professional services organizations. So we're very excited about that because we feel like this is an underserved market. It has been for years. So I'm going to talk for a second about Aperio, and then I really want to talk about what that market is. So the Aperio commercial is we have 2,500 customers, companies like Japan Post, Starbucks, Qualcomm, Genentech, Flextronics, Dolby. We've used platforms like Salesforce and Google to build our business and help our customers build their businesses. We focus exclusively on the cloud. We don't work with on-premise software unless we have to integrate some data to it. What we do in the product side is we provide services, but we also provide products, and that's what we're going to talk about today around professional services in the cloud. All right, so I want to go to why I'm excited about professional services. As an industry and a market, it's been completely neglected the last 15 years. I'm really excited about Sales Cloud. That makes sense for salespeople. I'm excited about Service Cloud, but I make the argument every time I talk to anybody, there's as many people in professional services as there are in customer support. Yet we never have seen solutions for that industry that have done well, because it's been very hard for them to get the attention. It's been hard to be flexible, and it's been hard because the idea of a professional services organization, it has to be collaborative. And that's been a place where on-premise legacy systems have been very, very poor in the past. And most of the applications that we've seen have been defined for manufacturing companies, not services companies. So they haven't been well suited. And they've been very siloed. So one of the fundamental premises that we believe is that you have to integrate to financials, but for services to be successful, it has to have a very close relationship to sales and customer support. That's the 360 of the customer, of the view of the customer. I know it when I was especially at webMethods, I remember a particular incident where I walked into a customer trying to sell them on a new product. I was in R&D at the time. And they said, well, you know, you really should talk to your services team, your professional services team, about the work they're doing and the problems we're running into. And I'm like, oh, I'll definitely do that. They're like, well, they're next door. You should talk to them. Because we didn't have visibility into what sales and services were doing collectively. And that, for me, really spawned this notion that something was wrong. So I'm sure, how many folks here are using either old legacy systems or a combination of spreadsheets to manage their services business? So a good number still. So you guys have seen or been through this in some fashion. So what we believe is services resource planning can be for the professional services industry what ERP was for manufacturing. And we think that's going to be enabled by the professional services cloud. We believe that Salesforce.com, their sales cloud, their service cloud, plus the solution that we have around professional services, will help alleviate and address this problem. It'll let us go after this 360 view of customer that we're looking for. And some of the most exciting things that I was thinking about today is that everybody has different businesses. Some of you you're serving, kind of old school customers. Some of you are dealing with cutting edge customers who are in marketing, and you'll use different parts of the platform. Some of you will say, we want reporting, easy to use, consultants to be in and out of the solution. Others will say things like Twitter and Facebook are really important because I have to stay ahead of my customers. The great thing about Force.com as a platform for us and for you is that you can configure it to your usage. So the professional services cloud has got to manage your business. And we really look at it as kind of 4 major process areas. So if you were talking about SFA, you would talk about accounts and opportunities, right? When you're talking about professional services, we talk about 4 major things: people, customers, projects, and numbers. On the people side, we talk about hire to retire processes. How do we go in from the day somebody enters or even before to get the best talent in our organization, onboard them, manage their skills over time, and manage their performance directly from where you're looking at their utilization, what they're achieving for hourly rate, how easy they are to staff, their training plan. All those things can be built in or customized for your own solution. The customers piece is where we leverage the Salesforce SFA solution in a significant way. All the CRM capabilities that you already are using with Salesforce.com, in addition being able to manage SOWs, being able to manage project status reporting, and extending to be able to deal with customer feedback as an account or even on your consultants individually. The project side is kind of the heart of what we're looking at from the professional services side. So we deal with problems that all of you are very familiar with: staffing and resource management, managing your portfolio of opportunities that you're looking at, your projects, looking at how you collaborate on projects, a lot of what the demonstration was showing here before, how you manage contractors and offshore. We've seen that has been one of the most interesting areas in terms of where a cloud solution is incredibly powerful. So it takes us a click or two to enable a subcontractor to enter time, a subcontractor to manage skills, because we're built on Force.com and you can turn it on in an instant. There's no difference in terms of the delivery architecture of what it takes for them to enter time or participate in your system. It's simply a matter of how you configure the security. So that is something that we're really excited about and are actually adding in the release that we just delivered about a couple days ago. And one of the great things about Salesforce is that we tend to follow their release schedule. So you get to see innovation happening quickly, and you get to choose what you're going to use or not. And then finally is, we call it the numbers: order to cash process, managing time and expense, monitoring utilization and burn, project level financials, being synced into your financial system. So being able to get a P&L view from within Salesforce, within our professional services product, but being able to integrate to your true financial system of record overall. And then something else we're excited about that we can talk about is forecasting around services. So we all know that services is a different animal. You can't just book the deal at the end of the month and say, hey, we're done. Right? It's about scheduling the time. It's about getting people on projects. It's about being able to forecast across that whole life cycle. So that's what we've tried to kind of go through and do. Now we're going to talk about the Convio story, and they're going to show a couple parts of the applications. We're also very happy to go continue this conversation later after the session at our booth and really give you a fuller picture, because the great part about professional services in the industry, it's like trying to demo Sales Cloud and Service Cloud in one day, right? And so we won't get to that in just a few minutes. The keynote couldn't get to it in 3 hours, so we hope you'll forgive us for that and give us come see us to talk about the areas that you're most interested in. So what I want to do now, without further ado, is I'm going to introduce Ken and Bern from Convio. And they've got a great story to tell. I'm not going to steal too much of their thunder, but they've got a great story in terms of being both the power users of Force.com and completely new to Force.com all at once. So I want them to talk through their story, demonstrate what they've built, and we're going to leave quite a bit of time for Q&A because we want to make this very as interactive as possible. So Ken and Bern, over to you guys.
Thanks, Narinder. So just a minute on who I am. So I run systems operations at Convio and kind of give the overview. I will give the overview slides and the slideware for what we built and why, and then pass it over to Bern for a quick demo, and I'll try to join in and chime in. Bern actually did most of the actual on-the-ground project implementation work at Convio. So we are a Austin, Texas-based company. We are for-profit, but all our clients are nonprofits. We help them with fundraising, running events, doing messaging through email, and also advocacy. And then about a year ago at Dreamforce '08, we launched our first Force.com application called Common Ground. We have a booth. It's 131. And that basically allowed us to get into the back-end donor database market. And so now we can serve clients that are, as few as 10 staff all the way up to the American Red Crosses of the world that have many, many different locations as well as staff and have huge budgets. And we're very excited about that. And then I'm also pleased to announce that we were nominated as a top 40 Force.com innovator this year. So really nice application that has anybody participated in online giving or gotten email exhortations for advocacy and so forth? So a lot of that stuff happens through our systems and through our software as a service. A couple of numbers. We have about 1,200 clients, a little more than that. We've processed, actually in 2008, we processed $750 million in contributions that have come through our payment gateway. And we've facilitated about 55 million advocacy actions, so sort of the fax your representatives and try and take action on issues that you care about. So that's Convio. And where we are as a services organization is trying to solve problems that have come up over the last 10 years of our existence. As with all of your businesses, getting a good implementation or managing our client deployments is critical for their success. And we found that it was more and more challenging to do that as we grew and as we grew the organization. In addition to having a sort of broad range of clients, we've got large clients in particular that have big custom requirements for their deployments and implementations. And they also have extended agreements with us for ongoing professional services and retainer-based professional services agreements. In addition, because our clients tend to be on the little bit less sophisticated side technically, and they also have a lot of staff turnover and those types of things, we had to grow the organization and really continue helping them and spend a lot of time sort of nursing their success along because with the monthly recurring revenue model, it's critical that you keep them interested, keep them engaged, and keep them successful. You can't just, as Narinder said, sell the product and then walk out the door. And then, of course, as we've grown, we've added more apps and services. The challenges that we had were difficulty in measuring our success in the implementations. So what data can we track? How are we tracking it? And can we report on it and run our businesses and run our departments with it? As I mentioned, we have a strong mix of both short and long-term agreements, which makes it difficult to forecast and plan for the future and what resources we need and how quickly we can address new projects that come down the pike. In addition, and I think Narinder addressed this one pretty well with the resource planning, the resource management software that comes out of the box with Apereo. We have now almost half of our company in services, broadly defined as professional services, support, and so forth. And those folks, when they walk out the door, they're taking a lot of institutional knowledge with them. They're taking a lot of potential work that we could be passing them if we can manage to cultivate them in their careers. So getting visibility into what their skills are, how they're evolving, what projects they've worked on, and being able to track that over time allows us to keep that institutional knowledge in the company and continue to get more value out of the people that we've essentially trained to be technical experts. And that was a challenge. Yeah. We have 350 employees, excuse me. And please just go ahead and interrupt. Sorry, I didn't say that at the outset. So that's where we were in terms of staff and career path and maintaining, keeping track of our staff. And then we also didn't have great insight into how sales and services integrate and how to make that process better. I've been hearing a lot of people at this conference talk about how sales throws things over the wall to services and then kind of walks away. We try to arrange our sales comp so that it doesn't, so that sales folks don't do that or are incented to not do that. But it's still a challenge that we needed to overcome. And I think that was it on that one. And then, in addition, of course, in order to get half the company as in the services department, you need to justify those heads, right? So these were all our big challenges. Quickly, where we were and what we were using. So we have a very deep implementation on Salesforce. We've been using it since 03, 02. In addition, we had this basically a time tracking system with OpenAir. And part of that might have been the way that we implemented it, but regardless, the way that it was working for us, we had, on the one hand, a very flexible, easy to use, easy to administer system, which had a good UI that everyone was comfortable with. And on the other hand, basically a time tracking system that didn't do much more than support time entry for specific projects that we put in. It didn't have core resource management, which is the staff and what their skills are, what their skills matrix is. And then it didn't have the features that we needed in terms of tying into our sales process. So we were looking at effectively a costly and time-consuming redeployment, effectively, or else it was time to look around and see what else was out there. So along comes Apereo. I guess I should use this like all the pros, huh? Along comes Apereo. They had out of the box a lot of the functionality that we needed. So the key, and I don't think Narinder mentioned this, but they've been using, and I think you mentioned it in the keynote, they've been using this to manage their services organization. They have a lot more projects on sort of a larger scale than we do, but this is actually, the professional services enterprise is actually the second generation of their professional services essentials system, which has been on the App Exchange for a while, and goes to the enterprise and adds a lot more functionality. And so we had a lot of confidence in the tool because they've been using it internally, even though it was at a more scaled down level. So it quickly allowed us to link services and sales, right? It's in Salesforce. It's in our application. We've got access to all the opportunities and so forth. And we'll demo this for you in a few minutes with Bernd. But in addition, we had created some custom objects in Salesforce that track our client assets and client contracts. And what eventually ended up happening is now we've got from lead to deal to implementation to support and resell engagements all in Salesforce. And we have access to all the project status and so forth within our system, which allows us to, A, do better CRM, but B, figure out where the gaps are, where we're dropping things, how we can improve on the sales handoff, how we can improve our sales services engagements and grow them and so forth. It also, because things are tied to opportunities, projects and so forth, resource requests are tied to opportunities, gives us insight to what's coming down the pike based on the percentage of the deal close, the probability of the deal closing, right? So now we've got, here's an opportunity, here's 5 resource requests that are associated with the opportunity. The deal is now at 90% probability of closing. Pretty likely that you're going to need to start planning for those heads and when they're available and what they're going to work on and what skills they need. And then, of course, it allows us to manage the resource request process, like I just mentioned, and gives us insight into our backlog as defined as, what are all the projects that we need to be working on and how are they staffed and when can we staff them. Just as a bit of insight, we have not gone to the step of integrating with the financial systems yet. We're currently on NetSuite. We'd like to get that going. We're not sure if we're going to be sticking with NetSuite right now, so it didn't make sense to take that on, and we had plenty on our plates with just moving off of spreadsheets and OpenAir into this new system. But that's a definite must-do. And however, in the meantime, I should note that because we've got resources, we've got an idea of how much they cost, and we know how much people are paying for them. We've got most of what we need to run our financial system. It's just not tied into the invoicing, right? Okay. And then the quote there is from our VP of Services, who basically, I'm working for effectively. And his point here was just that because we were able to use a model and be flexible about how we were going to implement it, we had a solid foundation for how we were going to then run our business. And we were cognizant of not wanting to tune our business to the tool, But at the same time, we were very happy to have a tool that would provide us a sort of framework for running our services organization. So the engagement experience, it was fast, I think.
Yeah.
Very fast.
Yeah.
I mean, 90 days doesn't sound fast, maybe, but for us it seemed very fast because we were going from Excel dashboards, open air time tracking, so shuttling all this data around, doing pivot tables and so forth, having to go back and forth between client contracts, which are maybe scans on the hard drive, and sometimes you go to the opportunity, but the opportunity is not very accurate, to having everything in Salesforce. So that was a big, big leap for us. But it was smooth, and it was fast, and Aperia's reputation preceded them in their ability to sort of get this thing rolling and get the meetings that we needed done and get the design done. And we got a couple of the folks that implemented our version of PSD up here in the front, Jeff, Douglas, and Miriam. Naruzi, I always mispronounce that, so thank you for that hard work. The experience was very good. So we had Salesforce.com, which everyone was familiar with, which greatly improved our user adoption and our ability to sort of get people excited about the system and onto it. There was still some static, and I'll address that in the lessons learned at the end. The moving the business processes and the data over to the new system was challenging. So we, and this is another area where we were glad to have a vendor that knew what they were doing and a software package that had a framework. We were going from anybody could create a project and book time to it, basically, to having the discipline around creating a project only if it had a contract and a SKU related to that project, and doing assignments for all of those projects by a sort of centralized organization in services operations. And this was a big stretch for us. And you know, I should probably use the Texas vernacular. Y'all probably have, pretty more evolved processes than we do. But regardless of how evolved yours are, this was a big step for us and made a huge difference in terms of being able to control the data and garbage in, garbage out. Now we have clean data coming in about who's working what projects and why, and which contract it's tied to, and what opportunity it was from, to how much time you're booking and whether you're available next week. The results are obvious. We had misscoped projects. We had concessions because we had not delivered in certain areas, and we had to go back and give away time. There were just a lot of areas where this is going to really help us. And I should also mention that we went live 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So we're still getting to know the system, and but we've got all our users using it. They're all entering time, and they're all happy. So let's see. Yeah.
Are all the new users, were they previously Salesforce users? All of them, or were there some new?
99%. I would say we've had some contractors. So there's two things there. So one is most of them were, so that wasn't a big deal. The ones that we didn't, that weren't already Salesforce users, we decided to make them full users rather than doing the Force.com license, because they need to access a number of other features, and that was okay with the expense level because it was only a few people. And then the other thing is, you can actually do proxy time. You can proxy in for folks that don't have a license in certain cases, if that makes sense for your business. And we actually ended up bringing in some of our key contractors as well into our org rather than through the portal, because that made sense for our business. Let's see. Now I'm getting smart.
So I promised Byrne that I wasn't going to interrupt him like Mark did me. So I'll try to resist from that. I will say this, though, that it's very interesting having a product that serves professional services people who are using the product to implement their product for their customers and their professional services business. It's kind of like one of those movies where you see people go back in time and you can't really figure out where the start and the end is. But that said, these guys are a fantastic customer, though I've learned that sometimes professional services organizations themselves focus their attention on their customers perhaps above their own needs. And so that was a very interesting experience to kind of go through with where you're trying to approach your own internal implementation with how you approach your client's implementation. And sometimes I was joking, and these guys were great. Sometimes it's the revenge of the client. You're like, every client that's ever scope creeped you, pushed you into a corner, you're like, this is my chance. But these guys weren't like that. So appreciate that a lot. But they were great. And so we're going to let Bernd kind of go through their demo, and I promise not to grab the keyboard more than once or twice from you.
Fine. That's fine. How's everybody doing? See people aren't leaving. That's good. So to kind of slice and dice the audience just a little bit, can I get a show of hands of folks that are with companies that are 50 employees and less? Okay. How about 50 to 200? And then more than that. Okay. Good mix. All right. So I'll give a little bit more background on myself and also some more accolades to Apereo. I was new to Convio. This is not the formula I would suggest necessarily, by the way. But I was new to Convio, had great guidance from Ken. The requisite sucking up to my boss at a conference, check. And I also wasn't familiar with Salesforce, but I remember in the interview process Ken saying, look at your background and I think you can pick it up. So that, and you do pick it up a lot. And a lot of patience from Jeff and the project manager peer on their side, Eric, in terms of bringing me along and trying to remember, oh, this guy doesn't know how to navigate through this. He doesn't know. I would keep asking about, well, what about reports? And what about reports? And they're like, we'll get to that. It works out. So I had a lot of professional services background running a services organization before, both the classic consulting, long 6, 12-month engagements with 10 people, all half dead after the project's done, that kind of stuff, to product consulting, and then also now with Convio. One of the other things to mention is that it's a large volume business. Ken mentioned, so it was not an easy challenge for these guys, whereby our business, Ken mentioned 1,200 clients, but those clients, there's a lot of upsells, there's a lot of multiple projects that they're doing. We have a large product suite, I think 100 different product SKUs that people can buy. So we're talking about just to give more context, we're talking about our biz ops people having to generate and create projects, sometimes to the tune of 5 a day. So a lot of our challenges were not just around accuracy and plugging revenue leaks like Ken had mentioned, but also the issue of efficiency, right? Is there anybody here in the room that is in charge of the biz ops side of things or have people working for them that are in charge of that, right? It's a painful process, and so I've been in those shoes before running a resource management organization too, and one of the big challenges is finding a tool that will allow you to template things and make things efficient so that your people aren't spending as much time on the administration side and the creation side as they are on the actual resource management side, right? Finding the best people for the best roles, things of that sort. So those were the challenges that were in the back of my mind that I was hoping we would be able to tackle. And fast forward, the answer is we have. Even just in 2 to 3 weeks of being live, we can see that there's going to be a large efficiency that is really going to allow the folks in our biz ops team to really tackle a lot of those things. So let me give a quick overview. I liked your term, the harbor view of how things look. So I'm going to assume a lot of folks in here are familiar with the Salesforce environment. But when it comes to using something like the Apereo product with PSE Enterprise, you'll notice that there's a bunch of different tabs up here. And when I trained our users, you had to, even folks that were familiar with the Salesforce environment, you had to get through the idea that there's a new paradigm. And that new paradigm is that there's the concept of a project object, right? And that's mapped into the opportunity. So now you have another tier in your hierarchy, if you will. And the way that we have it set up is that we have accounts. Largely our sales teams drive that activity along with the opportunities. But then with the opportunities, you have the idea of projects. And then giving a quick overview, you have resource requests that are made against those projects, right? All seems to make sense. Their vernacular actually works out really well, too. Users come up to speed very quickly on once they've kind of digested it just one time. And then people are then assigned to those resource requests, sometimes cross-referenced with skills and certifications, and we're starting to use that as well. And then there's all the downstream stuff with reports, and Ken's going to talk about some of the custom reports that Jeff helped us develop as well. So that's the layout. I wanted to walk you through a demo really and focus on some of the things that really have had a direct impact for us. I'm not going to show you how to necessarily use all the product in terms of assigning people and things of that sort. There's some great demos on their website. I'm happy to talk with you all about that at any time if you'd like to as well. But there's some great things in terms of how you can understand how this system really has integrated nicely with our environment. So I'm on an opportunity here. Did you want to interrupt yet?
No.
No, you're good? Okay, all right. So there's an opportunity here, and you'll notice that in the related lists already, there's a list of projects. And we have a model whereby we sell multiple service SKUs, right, that are part of our contracts to any given client. And it's very unusual for it just to be one or two. So usually there's multiple ones. And one of our issues in terms of speed with creating projects, like I said, it's a high volume business, was we wanted to be able to create have a templated model that captured things like resource requests, that captured things like milestones. We're talking about 11, which in our vernacular is very similar to tasks. And we wanted to make sure that it was linked very closely with the back end in terms of what kind of things we sold, all the way down to the dollar amounts and the number of hours. So in the model, the 85–90% of the scenarios where we have a product, we have a contract that has been sold, right? Any salespeople here? No? Okay. All right. I won't pick on you too much, right? So
One
for
man cares about what happens after the deal closes.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks
right.
for coming.
So there's like 15. I saw him in the 7:30 meeting too. I think maybe he's up for a career change. We'll see. So the 85 percentile is that we have a contract. Make sure that I remember to come back to the create project from template for that scenario. Very unlikely scenario where our good sales friend would never sell something that ask us to start something that doesn't actually have a contract. But for the cases where we actually do have a contract, single click will take you into creating a SKU from a project. Now what this is doing is going and looking at what has been loaded into our system already through our legal and finance team to represent the actual scope of what has been sold. This is not a laundry list of all the SKUs. We actually have 88 or 103. I get the number mixed up. So this represents not just those SKUs for this project or for this client on the opportunity product, but it actually represents only the service SKUs as well. Right, Jeff? Okay. So the other nice thing here is for the ops folks is when they create these projects, this list is deprecated. So you'll notice that as we work through this, I'll go ahead and do a demo with this ISO4. Sorry, you have to deal with our vernacular here. And it's built so that it will then generate a templated, pulls in a lot of information that we already know. Now I'm going to fly through some of this in the interest of time. We do want to leave folks time to ask questions. But there's a lot of great information that's automatically filled in, saves you a whole lot of typing and a whole lot of clicks. There's some typical stuff here, start dates and the end date for the project. We have the concept of a final launch. When is the actual project going to launch? Standard Salesforce functionality here. We're very flexible for us to allow to do rollovers, to explain what some of those custom fields are. We have the concept of a draft project as well. And a draft project was some customizations for us which allowed us to put a project in draft state, which is helpful for a number of reasons. You might be ready to start the project, and then when it's time to go, maybe there's a delay, and you want to be, and if you've mapped 10 or 12 resource requests and assigned people, right, what's one of the biggest pains? Right, that date slides, right? Customers never delay a start. But if they do, so long as it's in this draft state, and again, since we do such a large volume, it does happen from time to time, it goes into the system and pushes all those related dates out by the same calendar amount as well. That logic changes once the project's actually active. You also have the concept here for us of a parent project. Again, customization for us. We do a lot of bundling for our projects, meaning multiple SKUs are represented as one deployment activity. And so we wanted to provide the management team the ability to see that roll up. So the idea here is that we have a parent project, we create projects and map it to that, which I'll go back and show you one that I've created, and it represents all the time that gets submitted against that project, against all those child projects. You also have the ability to look at that roll-up view and see all of that information at more of a macro level. And for us, we have parent project vernacular, which makes sense only, well, it doesn't even make sense to me anymore, but for our services personnel, this is really where the categories fall. It's very flexible. We can update that pick list ourselves, as all of you are probably familiar, and then you can work through the process there. I'll identify, for the interest of this, a parent project. If there was an existing parent project, I had already done a bundle here for all of the training SKUs. But if this was another training activity, I would just map it to that training project. It's very easy. We have different scenarios in terms of the size of the project we want to be engaged in. We have different stages in terms of the project. And then here we would enter all of our financial information.
I think, Bern, as you're doing this, I will mention one thing. One thing that's important that we enjoy about Force.com as a platform is the ability to serve a wide variety of customer sizes. And it's obvious that we can do it from a volume perspective. Our smallest customers are 10, 20, 30 users, and our largest one currently is about 5,000 plus users. And what you find is it's not, for us, what's been the challenge has not been that the platform won't scale. It's really that the level of process sophistication you want is a dependency on how many people you have. And then in Convio's case, actually they have a little bit more sophistication than the sheer number would imply just because of the volume of transactions. And so I think those are the kinds of things as you're planning out, what's it going to take? How do I think about implementation? There's some element of how large your services team is, certainly. But at the end of the day, that's one dimension. I think the other one that's forgotten is the sophistication of your business process. And so one thing that we certainly try to do, and the platform helps a lot, is being able to kind of scale that up and down. But I do think that there's some point at which you recognize that we're building for a business process around services. And sometimes when you're very, very early, you just need to have a little bit more than a spreadsheet. That's probably not the best of fit. It's really when you need something that's going to be able to scale a services business that some of the process discussion that Bern's bringing up really works well. So sorry.
Yeah, that was good. And the team, and the Apereo team, they understand how services work. So even if they thought we were crazy with some of our business processes, they let us know that, and then we worked from there. No, I'm just kidding. So again, moving forward, most of this, you'll see the milestones. This milestone set is different for what, depending on what the SKU is. So now I can create this project. And we will get... Right. So the question is, where do those milestones come from? They're templated, mapped directly to the SKU. So we have the project. I won't belabor all the details here that you've seen, but you'll notice now that the project details page has some of the other more custom items that we have in terms of the KPIs that we need to map. You'll notice now, though, that you have a very detailed view that you can control with different views for your different profiles. There's a lot of flexibility. I don't have enough time to really go through all the detail here, but you can, for non-billable projects, you can still have it count towards utilization. They think about a lot of those things that really drive those metrics that any services group would really want to keep track of. You have different information about the actuals when it comes to financials, and also actuals with time. So as that time is entered and approved, it shows up here. There's also related lists with project actuals that let you drill down into that, not only at the macro level, but based on different time frames. So, and we have a number of different project contract types. So we don't just have fixed or time and materials. We make it very complicated for ourselves with trying to be flexible for our customers. So a lot of information here. As you go back to the actual opportunity, and again, lots of quick contact information. I will mention this one with contracts and assets. Big issue for us, making sure that people that use the system have access to the system and the related information. Saves a lot of time with extra phone calls and emails to your ops folks when the information is there and available on the actual project object. So when I go back to the opportunity, I want to show everybody a special feature, custom, that was built on top of the Force.com platform to allow us to, we talked about that revenue leakage, right? And so let's say that you have a project that has been created in the sales cycle. The executive says, hey, let's get this started. This is a big customer. We know the deal's going to close. We don't want to hold up the activity. I can still create a project. I can still create a project from a template, even though the deal hasn't been signed, and this create project from template, again, I won't go through the details there, but what that brings up is a list of all of those milestones, all of those SKUs, and I can pick it there, and you get economies of scale for your ops folks, right? Then you create it. Well, then what happens after the deal signs, right? Maybe some of the details have changed. So we have a diff check button, which goes and looks at a lot of different scenarios, but basically the gist is the diff check goes back and says, okay, let me look at all the assets and the projects that have been created. Do they match? Do you have orphaned assets that need a project? Do you have projects that don't match the details in your asset, right? So is it set for 100 hours, and did you get a contract for 100 hours? Those sorts of details. So when you go into the diff check here, and again, this isn't necessarily the best, it's not going to show every scenario for us because I don't have actual assets there, but you'll notice I get a nice message that says projects that need to be created for existing opportunity products. I've got 3 of those, and client assets without corresponding opportunity products. They're all 11 of them. But you'll notice that there's, like I said, there can be other details, 2 other classes that would follow up here that would tell us if we actually had a mismatch in terms of what got sold in terms of dollars or hours and what we actually set up as a project. And it gives you the opportunity with quick links to actually go create a project here or go look into the existing project and make updates to that information. So it's very cool. It really, and we didn't do this because our ops staff can't handle numbers and do math. It's much more of a, like I said, high volume, but it really makes, I think it makes our internal customers very happy to know that somebody else is checking this on a regular basis. So, and again, this was a custom piece developed by the team. We had a number of other custom pieces I'd love to show you guys, but we don't have the time. And I can choose to leave those objects out there. You notice it was a message. It wasn't an error message. So I can continue on with the business and not get held captive by an application or a tool that won't let me move forward. And real quick, I will show on these related lists here that you'll notice here are my projects. And as I mentioned before, this is the project we created here, ISO4, with a parent project. And if I wanted, and I created one prior to this to demonstrate how we bundled the training items. And if I go into this project, which doesn't indicate that it's got a parent, that's the parent project for that. We need to change our naming convention so it says parent. But it represents all that roll-up information. So you get this nice bundling that is very helpful when you're trying to get the more macro view for the deployment team. There's a lot of great information in here. We have project managers working on the actual projects and demonstrating. I'm going to show you one more thing, and then I'll go on here. So you'll notice one of the reports that Ken's going to show you here in a moment is the constant need for information about how a project is doing. So again, these were more customized fields that were created for us. The out-of-the-box has a project status and notes, but we decided we wanted to be a little bit more granular. Our head of services, who's ultimately our customer for this, wanted to know at a glance how are we doing relative to schedule, to the to CSAT, and to our financial elements. Now, granted, there's not logic running in the back to say, okay, if these things are true, then this is red, yellow, or green, although we aspire to get to that with the finance stuff. But I can identify for this project if I've got any issues going on in these areas. If any of these areas are anything other than green, it will surface on a report that Ken's going to show you all shortly, and it gives a shot at a glance. So he knows going into his manager's meeting, okay, these are the clients that have issues, and we need to look at those things. So again, flexibility, it was a report that they developed in very short order, didn't involve a whole lot of calculations, but in terms of displaying it, the system proved its flexibility there, and something that we did not know that it could do. So,
I think you had a question, Brian.
sorry, a question? Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks, Brian.
Sure.
So again, quick summary: deal, opportunity, SKUs in the opportunity products, projects with resource requests, so that services knows what's coming. If the deal then closes, we can go back with that cool diff check feature, tie it to the actual contract so that there's a record of what transpired, and then we can move forward with servicing the client. What I'm going to do now is come in as the manager or services head that wants to get information out of the system, and just show you a couple of things in the interest of time. One is I'll just go right into my role as, say, I'll play two roles. So I'll play the role of the traffic cop or the traffic coordinator. And this is out-of-the-box functionality from Apereo. It's called the Resource Planner. And this will allow me to see all the projects that are coming and the resource requests that are associated with them. And as you can see, it's Apex and Visualforce. And right now we're going out and getting all the resources that are in the system. And I can see all of them on the left here and their availability. As I mentioned before, we're still building this system out, so this isn't fully populated. But I am in production right now. And then
I'll mention, too, that the reason there's not numbers in every single one of those is our first effort was to get all the assignments spread out, and then the traffic coordinators are going back and populating that with the actual spread of the hours. So,
as well as our start and end dates
that's
and
right.
so forth.
That's right.
Which, of
Can
course,
you
weren't
zoom out the
correct
date?
in the existing system. Yes, thank you. I was just wondering what I need to do here. So here we are with the snazzy Flex, Flex functionality within the UI. And I can see here that somebody is overbooked.
Let's double click on it.
And then that's Bennett. And if I double-click, we get this cube functionality, which went a little bit too fast for the screen there. But then that drills me into what his schedule is and why he might be overbooked. Okay, so right there we see his schedule, and we can start doing some resource leveling. Okay, there's that cube feature. Did you catch that? Okay, cool. So very nice functionality there, and we, like Bern said, we're in the process of doing that. And there's also it's called the Staffer, which allows you to do similar things with your resources and tie them to projects and so forth. So this is the resource view. There's also a Staffer. It shows the resource requests and the projects and allows you to create assignments. Okay, so that's me as the traffic coordinator. And then I can come in here as the services manager. I've got these handy links down here on the side in the Apereo Service Manager section. And then I've also got some custom reports over here. And I'm not going to upgrade Firefox right now. And what I wanted to show you is one custom report that we build, which has some nice nesting, which was written in Visualforce based on standard SOQL queries that come out of Salesforce. And it's the project status report. Occasionally, this takes a little while to load because we've got over 4,000 projects in the system.
Yep.
Part of the reason for that is that we've got a lot of ongoing account management projects in the system. Not all of those is constantly being updated. So right here, the data might look a little thin, but what this is a Visualforce page. You've got your practices, which I guess we didn't talk about in detail. But we've got our resources, and we've also got our practices, and each one of these is basically a service area. And this report shows along the top, you can see the opportunity that was associated with the project, the manager, the schedule status, the financial status, and the client satisfaction status. And this will surface any project that is yellow or red in any of those. So it doesn't give you a, hey, everything's green, great. It only shows the ones that you might care about. And then, of course, if you want the detail, you can go run a question.
Yeah. How flexible is this management and tracking tool with projects that have, let's say, customized or one-time only workflow, including projects for working on your business?
So the question was, how flexible is this project for tracking internal projects
like
or
non-billable?
one-time projects?
You can- you-
non-billable.
Custom project for client or our internal strategic project?
Yeah, so we basically look at this as being kind of, you can mark a project as billable or non-billable, internal or not, and even you can create projects for skill development or training. And so the idea is that there's a whole 360 around that. We're certainly optimized for a services business who's serving external clients and then doing that versus somebody who's exclusively focused internally on services projects. So the use case still may work, but our certain optimization is around revenue generating parts of the business that are externally focused that have some of those projects, but it's not the centerpiece. The one thing
I'll add to that too, real quick. In practice, that we have within the first 2 weeks of go live, we set up, I'd say, a dozen internal projects for those types of collateral development initiatives. The system also allows you for some of the resource management tools to exclude those projects from those views, right? So you don't have clutter, if you will. Not that internal projects aren't important, but if you're looking at wanting to staff resources and you don't want to look at projects that simply aren't going to apply because either they're internal by definition or they go on in perpetuity, right, then you can exclude those.
So I was just playing around with their instance. The one thing I'll say is that so they've kind of customized this to the few tabs that are most relevant to them. But if you look at all the tabs in the system, you can see we talked about some of them. We didn't talk about things like billing advance and skills matrix and revenue forecasting. And a lot of that can actually come through in, you can go to the website and see all the other modules. It's fascinating to me to see which modules a particular client focuses on. It's always the ones that used to cause you the most pain. Right? So some people will gravitate towards, I want to show you how we do forecasting now because that used to be the pain point. For these guys, obviously the operational side was a key pain point for them. And maybe what we could go through now, Ken, is just talking about some of the lessons learned that you guys had through the process.
Sounds good. So the obligatory executive sponsor bullet, that was actually a key factor. We actually started this review probably a year ago and then realized that OpenAir wasn't going to get us there. Started thinking about what to do about 6 months ago, and that's why we are where we are now. Because of where we've started from, we had to accommodate a lot of different fears and concerns about what we were going to implement. So we had to implement some structure, and some folks thought that was too much overhead, too much red tape to deal with. But anybody who's using the data coming out of the system is ecstatic about what we're doing. I mentioned being flexible about how you map your business process. We learned a lot of lessons about how to run a services organization from the product. And while we didn't want to map our process to the product, we felt there was a good interplay between those two. It was challenging to get the system up and running and making sure that it worked right. We had a lot of faith in the data structures, and Aperio shared with us the data model behind the PS Enterprise. If you're a data junkie, that was really helpful. And for me, it allows me to map my thought process. So that was really useful. But getting your use cases right and making sure you pull your data in time to do your acceptance testing so that you know that it works right and that you're getting good reporting was key. As I mentioned, we hired Bernd to run this process, to run this project, and that was key. The combination of Bernd and the fact that they reorganized, that services was behind this project, and they reorganized a bit to create a services operations department, basically pulling together a bunch of roles that people had been doing in their spare time, formalizing them, really helped with the communication process, and really was a key to success because we were able to give people constant updates, let them know when they were going to be trained, how they were going to be trained, and when they were going to get cut off from the old system, things like that. And then I don't know how many of you have sold Salesforce projects or Force.com or AppExchange projects inside your organization, but it's been done enough, and we've done it in other areas enough that while we didn't, we're one of the early clients. We're in the top first 10, I think, for PS Enterprise. There's quite a few more PS Essentials, but because of the reputation of Apereo, because of Salesforce, and the fact that we'd done Force.com projects before, we were able to take a bit of a leap of faith and go with the product, and we've been pleased. And that's pretty much it. I think we've got about
One more slide from me. Ken was able to take a leap of faith, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate that. And I think the point being that we say a lot of times is that Force.com as a platform allows you that because it's building on the same infrastructure that you have. I was joking with Ken when we were preparing. I was like, even if Apereo went away, which we have no plans to do, what we've done as a product is the same thing that you would use to customize every other part of your Salesforce instance. So it's standard for customers who are already using Salesforce. And we've really said that the philosophy for us has been around using that platform in an advantage. And you saw some of that this morning in terms of what's next. For us is about half of our feature set is around using what Salesforce already provides. And the other half is about adding the professional services part into it. So we've tried to put in best practices, visibility, talent management, and use and combine that with the Force.com platform. So for example, if you're using Salesforce content, yesterday Mark announced that it's free now. That comes with it. So if you create content that's associated with your projects, like SOWs, that comes as a part of it. If you're using Chatter when it comes out, we'll configure that so it's optimized for a services organization, but that becomes part of the experience. And so it builds upon itself, and it's been a really important part of why we chose building on Force.com as the platform to deliver this, because it's my developers who are fantastic, but I also feel like I get the development army of Salesforce behind our features. So in just very, very rapid iteration, we've been able to add substantial features, a lot of which has been our effort, but a lot of which has been because of what Salesforce provides. And we love it when Mark starts giving away things like content because it makes our product that much stronger as well. So we have a couple minutes left. Yeah, a couple minutes left. Questions? Yeah. No. So as a product, the professional services. I'm sorry, and there's a mic there as well. The question was on the Microsoft project integration. One thing that we have not done, Apereo hasn't done, is to dictate your project management choice, because that's very personal to independent companies, and often it's not your choice, it's the clients you're serving's choice. And so we will, over time, start to build out some of those integrations, and you certainly could kind of relate those to the projects, but we're obviously managing kind of one level above that in terms of projects, regions, practice groups, financials, and so trying to manage a meta layer around your project management tool versus trying to tie it into one specific one. So we'll build some kind of proof of concepts, and we've already done something with Google that you saw on stage earlier. We'll likely do the same with some of the other ones, or we'll leave it to the ecosystem to build on top of that, just so we start to get our customers doing a lot of that.
Just one comment is we shopped around it for other vendors as well, and there's Dream Factory provides a professional services. You can find it on AppExchange. We found that their project kind of Gantt charting and so forth, the typical Microsoft project, was much more closely modeled by Dream Factory, but we decided that was less important to us than managing the people, the time, and mapping them to the sales process.
And I look at those as completely complementary, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the tool to manage a project is a little different than the tool to manage your business. And so we look at, we're very friendly to other project management tools that are out there. Mm-hmm. Other questions? A couple more minutes. Yes.
I have several questions, so I'll try to be brief. How long did you have
Do you want a mic?
Yeah.
Can we, do you know how to turn
There's
this on?
a switch on the bottom.
Is that the switch?
How long did you have Open Air before you decided to make the leap over to Apereo?
We had, so there's a company merge thing that happened in between there, but we were basically, within Convio, we were using it for about 2 years.
Okay. How did you feel that the support was, you said with the data migration, that was particularly challenging? Mm-hmm. And how did you feel, not only with Apereo's support with that, but your internal capacity to be able to make that data transition, knowing that you have projects that are in queue and having to have it all set up so that when you go live, it's ready to hit the ground running?
Yeah, I'll probably take a stab at it and then pass it to Bern, but that was a big challenge. So first of all, getting data out of Open Air was a challenge because they don't let you export unique identifiers, which was a real problem. Then getting the data into Salesforce, we had to do a bunch of scrubbing. The we took on the data migration task internally. We could have had that quoted as part of the Apereo deal, but because we had some internal expertise, we took that on ourselves.
Did you have your own data tables that you kept your project information within?
We had to pull that out of OpenAir and then massage it and import it into Salesforce, which was the easy part. And then, so in terms of support from Apereo, we didn't ask for it, but we still got a little bit of it because we were clumsy with some of our stuff, and Jeff was happy to come in and chip in, and plus there's Data Loader and other ways that you can get the stuff in and out of Salesforce easily. On the OpenAir side, it was challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'll add to that the challenge was part and parcel of our fault because there was no discipline. To give you some context very quickly, if you all worked at Convio, every single one of you had permissions to create projects. That's scary. So we had a lot of dupes in there. We had a lot of things, like you said, no unique identifiers didn't map. And we actually made a change in terms of that had to level set some expectations upstream that we weren't going to pull over every single project. We were going to go look anything that was active from X number of months ago, then we were going to pull those over so that we didn't have to create a ton of projects. But even then, we still had challenges, but it was not a reflection of Apereo or the product, but it was, I would definitely, there's a lot of cleanup, and I would definitely factor that in, both on the front and the back end.
Two things. We're going to run out of time here, so I know there's some questions. Two things. First of all, Ken and Byrne, you guys will be here for a couple minutes.
Yep, sure.
We both have, I'm sorry I didn't put your booth, Convio.
131.
131, Apereo 616. You can come see us afterwards. I'll be there a little bit later this afternoon after lunch meeting. And there's people in our booth who are experts in it. The head of our products around that could talk through any of that. And then I want to just point out on our website, you can go there and see the core of PS Enterprise. And somebody's very fast in our marketing department who's put up basically the scenario we demoed today with Social PS Enterprise as well. So I want to really thank everyone for their patience with us. We're very excited to talk to you afterwards. There's a bunch of folks that were from the project team from Apereo and others here. We're happy to continue these conversations here, and I look forward to talking to a whole bunch of you later. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you to Byrne and Ken, too.